Continuing on in license law, our next slide here is going to talk about the Real Estate Commission. Interestingly enough, I used to say that you would not be tested on the Real Estate Commission. However, I have been told by students that occasionally they will get a question come through about the commission. So let's talk about who the actual commission is. The commission is a group, it's composed of 9 individuals. Now, when you look at my number here, each one of those is going to mean something 973211. So you can use that as a mnemonic device if you like. But these 9 people who serve on the Real Estate Commission, think of it as an honorary position. It's not a paid position. They do get paid on the days that they're in town doing business, which is usually a couple of days per month, but it's not like a salaried position. So let's talk about the 9 in the first number. Obviously means that there are 9 people on the commission. Out of the 9, 7 of them are appointed by the governor. So if you wanted to be on the Real Estate Commission, the best bet would be to make friends with the governor. The 3 stands for the fact that at least 3 people on the Real Estate Commission must have their real estate license. As it turns out, almost all of them do. You'll see why all of them don't here in just a moment. But a minimum of 3 must be licensed real estate agents. When you look at the number 2, there have to be 2 of the 9 that are in fact not real estate. In other words, not even involved in the real estate business. They're more like the public members, you might say. So 2 of those. And then 1. Remember, 7 of the seats were appointed by the governor. 1 is appointed by the Speaker Pro Tem of the House, and the other one is appointed by the Senate. So there are your 9 seats right there, 7, 1, and 1. So anyway, that's what the commission is composed of. As I mentioned, it is not a paid position. They will get a per diem for being in town. And another question that you occasionally see pop up is, the commission is actually entitled to the services of the Attorney General for the state. Interestingly enough, the Real Estate Commission is self-funded. Real estate agents actually pay fees every year to be agents. And then when they take classes, we also have to pay fees for them to sit in our classes. And that's what funds the Real Estate Commission. So this is not costing the taxpayer any money. Having said that, the Attorney General is at the disposal of the Real Estate Commission if needed. Okay, so there's your composition. And you say, what is the purpose of the Real Estate Commission? Well, I often have to tell my students this when I'm teaching CE classes, is that the Real Estate Commission was not actually put in place to protect real estate agents. The purpose of the Real Estate Commission is they're a regulatory organization. In other words, they were put in place to protect the consumers, in essence, to protect the consumers from the actions of real estate agents. And you say, well, how does the commission protect consumers? Well, the commission actually puts together courses and provides a system of education for people to get licensed, continuing education for their license, and of course, as provisional brokers, you know, of course, post-licensing training as well. These courses are actually written by the commission so that we stay on the same syllabus, so that the new agents and then continuing agents through a course of continuing education are being updated on what the commission believes are important topics. Another way that the commission acts is they regulate the actions of licensees. Now, this is going to be kind of a tip for you for test purposes. The Real Estate Commission, it will be tempting in the test to say that one of the ways they regulate agents is to fine agents, F-I-N-E, but I promise you that is not the case. The Real Estate Commission can never fine agents for acts that you do on your license. Well, you may say, well, what's the big deal then? Why is the commission a big deal to licensees? Well, what the commission can do is reprimand or censure a licensee. In other words, they can do a public castigation if someone has acted outside of the rules. But very importantly, the commission can also suspend your license, or they could revoke an agent's license. If you are working for others for compensation, you're going to find that very, very hard to do if your license has been suspended or revoked. So keep that in mind. I think I had mentioned that in an earlier class as well, so that you possibly would see that come up on the exam. By the way, another distinction on this, remember, even though the commission can never fine you, it doesn't mean you'll never be fined. Keep in mind that if you violate criminal law, the courts could fine you. for acts that you do under your license, but the courts can't take your license. They didn't give it to you, so they can't take it away. And then obviously you could be sued in a civil court as well. So right now we're talking about what the commission can do: reprimand, censure, suspend, revoke. That's all that the commission can do to licensees. And you see that in the bottom bullet point there when we talk about disciplinary activities. Very important for exam purposes. Continuing with general licensing provisions. So let's talk about a couple of important things here. Provisional broker, pre and post license education. All right, so here's the deal. And again, I need you to know this specifically for test purposes. So here's the first question. To become a provisional broker, you need to take a 75-hour course. Now, if you're taking this online, the rules are a little bit different, but it's designed to be a 75-hour course. To become a provisional broker, you must pass a classroom exam so that you qualify to take a state exam. And if you qualify to take the state exam, you must pass that, which has a state and a national portion, to gain your license. So what does a provisional broker have to do to get a license? They in fact need to take a 75-hour class, pass a classroom exam, pass a state exam, okay? That's how you become a provisional broker. Now, once you become a provisional broker, the question becomes, how do you become a broker? Well, the way that you become a broker is that you have to take 3 30-hour post-licensing courses. 3 times 30 is 90 hours. It just so happens that they're broken up into 30-hour courses. And once you complete these courses, you become a broker. Now, be careful here. On the exam, it might actually talk to you and make it sound like you have to have a certain amount of experience to be a broker. You don't have to have any experience to be a broker. You have to have becoming a broker is simply an educational requirement. So 3 30-hour classes, 301, 302, 303, broker relationships, contracts, and then special topics, license, law, and rule comments is what the third class is called. However, here's another tricky thing for the exam. Even though there is a preferred method for taking these 301, 302, and 303, there is no set pattern within which you take it. So if your schedule allows you to take 303 first, which would be license, law, and rule comments, and then 302 and 301, there is no penalty for that. So there are 3 30-hour classes. Again, important, you must take those within 18 months of being licensed. You could take them at any point during that 18 months. You could all take them all in the first month if you wanted to. You could literally become a broker before you've ever sold any real estate, but you must have them completed by the time you reach your 18-month anniversary, okay? What happens if you do not satisfy that requirement? Well, what happens is if you do not knock out your post-licensing classes in the appropriate amount of time, you can't be active. So if you are operating active in the field and you did not fulfill your provisional broker status, your post-licensing courses to become a full broker, a non-provisional broker, then in fact, your license would go inactive until you had made up any deficit that you had in regards to these courses. So what's the penalty? You're inactive until you complete the courses appropriately. All right, next bullet point. Now, everything I'm telling you right here is important because it's specific and it's a little bit confusing. You can't conflate any of these things I'm talking about right now. What I just told you is 90 hours of post-licensing education to become a broker. Now look at this next bullet point. License expiration and renewal. Every year at June 30th, your license will expire if you have not renewed it. Currently, it's a $45 fee. That's all you have to do to renew your license. You'll get a bill sometime around May 15th, and it has to be paid by 11/59/59 on June 30th. If you haven't paid it by July 1st, your license is expired. Now, let me talk to you about why that's important. The words that go together here are current versus expired. If you have paid your fees appropriately, you are considered to be current. Now, by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're active. That just means that you've paid your fees on time. If you haven't paid your fees on time, then you would be considered to be expired. Your license would be expired. And we'll talk separately about the penalties for expired versus some other statuses a little bit later. So fees, June 30th, and expired go together. Please remember that. And then you want to look at the last bullet point as well. When it comes to continuing education, here's what you need to remember. A new licensee would have to take their CE regimen by their second renewal date. Okay, in other words, you don't get a pass on paying your fees the first year. If you get your license in May, you're still going to have to pay your new fees for the next year by June 30th. However, if you get your license in May of 2020, you would not be obligated to take your CE until by June 10th the following year. In my example, it was 2021. Okay. Now let's take a look at CE. Your continuing education is going to be 8 hours. Of that 8 hours, 4 of it is going to be what we refer to as a general update written by the commission. This is required every year. Obviously, it's a different topics every year, but your general update is required every year, 4 hours. Then you can take a 4-hour elective. You will find out that there are tons of electives out there, but notice I said it had to be 4 hours. If you see a course on another state that you like and you want to take it, it will not substitute if it's less than 4 hours. And by the way, if you choose to do one outside the state, you would have to have the approval of North Carolina first to make sure that it does count. So CE, 8 hours starting with your second renewal, 4-hour general update, 4 hours of an elective. If you fail to take the appropriate continuing education, your license will be inactive. So again, the word inactive comes up. So when I'm reading a test question, if I don't take post license, my license is inactive. If I don't take the appropriate CE by the appropriate time, my license is inactive. If I don't pay my fees, my license is expired. And by the way, just so you'll know, don't fall for any trick that leads you to believe that continuing education gives you any credit towards your post-licensing classes, and your post-licensing classes do not give you any credit towards CE, okay? Be very specific about these dates and what they mean. Now, if for some reason you fail to do, as I said on the previous slide, here's what's going to happen. If you fail to pay your license fees, which are currently $45, I said you could do that between May 15th and June 30th. If you fail to pay your license fees, then when you wake up on July 1st, you're going to smack your head and you say, oh my gosh, my license is expired. Well, listen, don't panic. If you will simply pay your fees before the end of the year, December 30th, then you will just simply pay a penalty. It'll be a $45 penalty. So 45 plus 45 is 90 currently. Okay. So you'll pay $90 and then your license will be current. But hold on just a second. If your license expired, you couldn't have been active. So if your license expires, what happens is you're going to have to pay to become current. And then once you become current, then you can send in the paperwork to reactivate your license. Okay. So notice that I said if it's expired less than 6 months, pay $90 and file Form 208. And if you're a provisional broker, that would involve you and your broker in charge filing that form. You'll both sign the same form. If your license expires and it goes greater than 6 months, but less than 2 years, well, now you got a little bit of a problem. Okay, so there has to be a penalty involved. So what you're going to do, if that's the case, is you have to complete one of the post-licensing courses. It's a 30-hour course. You'd have to complete that. You'd have to resubmit an application and pay the $90 fee. And if you do that, you have to do a criminal background check again. In other words, the same criminal background check when you got your license. Now, you can either do this, which is what most people do, or you can pass the state and national exam. And I'll tell you, the reason most people don't do that is because they think back to that 75-hour class and how difficult it was to pass that state or national exam. So notice that's an either or. If it's 6 months to 2 years that your license is expired, that's fine. You can still get your license back in good standing, but it's going to cost you 30-hour course, new application, new criminal background check, $90 fee, or you could simply do the application fee and then take the state or national exam again. Now, here's the deal. If your license expires for greater than 2 years, you're going to have to start over from scratch if you ever want your license again. I can't tell you how many times I've heard students in class who will say something to the effect, I moved out of North Carolina. I never thought I'd use my real estate license, so I stopped paying my fees. Do you realize your fees are only 45 bucks? Okay. So even if you move out of state, or even if you take another career, pay you $45, because if it goes greater than 2 years, this is not redeemable and you'd have to start over from scratch on that. Here's the importance of this slide. What happens if I don't pay my fees? If it's within 6 months, just pay a penalty and then activate your license by going through the appropriate steps. 6 months to 2 years, you're going to take some education on top of it. And then you're still going to have to do all this other stuff, file the application, criminal background check, etc. If it's over 2 years and you haven't paid your fees, you're starting from scratch if you ever decide that you want your real estate license again. Okay. And then one final note on this little section right here. We talked about what it took to become a provisional broker. We talked about what it took to become a broker. But let me say, closely related to this is we're now going to talk about the fact that provisional brokers must be supervised by a broker in charge. And you say, well, what would that look like? Okay, you have your license. Well, remember, you can't be active without a broker in charge. So the first thing you need to do is find a broker in charge who wants to supervise you, who's willing to supervise you. And then that broker in charge and you would fill out Form 208. It's the license activation form, and it names your broker in charge. Okay. So you do that, and you must send it to the commission within 10 days of the relationship, and you can start working immediately on that. You're a provisional broker, you'll have to be supervised, but you're licensed to do real estate at that point. The broker in charge is responsible for making sure that you, the provisional broker, comply with the rules and make sure they do their paperwork correctly, complete the paperwork, turn it in, et cetera, et cetera. Supervision. The wording used to be that a broker in charge was responsible for the direct supervision. Even though the wording has changed a little bit, the idea is that the broker in charge has oversight of everything that the provisional broker does. And then if for some reason that the broker in charge and the provisional broker separate ways, then both parties should notify the commission within 10 days of the termination of the relationship. Commission, PB Jones no longer works for me. And so I can't oversee, I don't have oversight of them anymore. So don't come to me if that provisional broker does something incorrectly. Broker supervision of provisional broker, broker in charge, supervision of provisional broker. Now, let me mention this to you. Over the last few slides, I think I've mentioned about 4 things that a provisional broker must do to be or remain active. So let's review those real quick. Well, the first thing that a provisional broker would have to do is that they would have to find a broker in charge and activate their license. There's one, okay? The provisional broker would have to take the appropriate CE, just like everybody for that matter, to remain active, okay? The appropriate CE by June 10th, et cetera, okay? That's 2. The third thing that a provisional broker would have to do to remain active is that they would also have to take their 90 hours of post-licensing education within 18 months, their post-licensing. So there's number 3. And then of course, just like everybody, the provisional broker would also have to pay their $45 to keep their license current, because you can't be active if you're not current. All right. So broker in charge supervision of provisional broker. We'll revisit some more license rules when we come back for the next presentation.